Hey David, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm just trying to write an essay for my philosophy class, but I keep having trouble with my spelling.
What words are you having trouble with?
Well, for instance, I wanted to use the word rapport, but I had no idea it was spelled R-A-P-P-O-R-T. That doesn't make any sense in terms of pronunciation.
That's true, but it makes more sense if you know that the word rapport comes to English from French, and that the French commonly use a silent T at the end of words. Did you know that 30% of English words originated from French?
That's kind of interesting, but it doesn't particularly help me with this essay.
Oh, but it should. The history of English is fascinating, and learning a little bit about it can really help you to understand the great variety of spelling in English.
Sure, but
It all started sometime around the 5th century, when three Germanic tribes called the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes settled in the island that we now know as England. The Anglo-Saxons, as they were collectively known, laid the foundation for English. They had words that we still use every day, like child, bird, cow, chicken, and fish.
I already know how to spell those.
Yes, that's because Anglo-Saxon words tended to be short, only one or two syllables. But can you spell martyr, ordinance, and candle? Those words derive from Latin, and are supposed to have entered the Anglo-Saxon or Old English language in the 6th and 7th centuries, due to the influence of Christianity on the island. Bishop and font also come from this period.
Good Lord.
Exactly, but English wasn't finished growing yet. Additional words arrived in England during the Viking invasions of the 8th and 9th centuries. Norse, the Viking language, was quite similar to Old English, but still contributed many important nouns to it, such as window, husband, and anger. Also notably, the common action verbs give and take.
Is that so?
It is. The Vikings were very influential, although perhaps not as influential as William the Conqueror, who arrived from the French kingdom of Normandy in 1066.
He arrived.
He conquered, and for many years afterwards, Norman, an early French dialect, was the language of the upper classes. That's why many formal and legal words in English come from French, like justice and parliament. They were the ruling class, and so their words tended to refer to fancy, sophisticated things, while the Old English kept their everyday vernacular. Although French words replaced certain Anglo-Saxon ones, sometimes both words continued to be used, which is why modern English has a large number of synonyms, or words with similar meanings. For instance, the word reply comes from Norman, while answer is an Old English word. These days we use both.
So when I tell you that you are giving me an unnecessarily long reply, I'm actually speaking French?
More or less. And the same goes for the word rapport that you mentioned earlier. This influence also accounts for many other inconsistent word spellings. Should I tell you what happened during the Renaissance?
Why not?
During the Renaissance, education and literacy increased, and it became very fashionable to use Latin again. I've read that more than 10,000 words entered English from Latin at that time, including explain and relax. The playwright Shakespeare also coined many new words during this period, including gossip, luggage, and generous. He was also first to use fashionable, or at least he was the first person to write it down. They say he invented like 1,700 words.
That's pretty impressive.
I know. Even more impressive is how widespread English has become since Shakespeare's day. It is regularly spoken by nearly 700 million people, most of whom are non-native speakers. And English is a significant language in more than 45 countries.
Is that because it's the best language in the world?
No, not quite. The success of English as a global language has more to do with colonialism. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the British Isles expanded their influence over the rest of the world, through both trade and colonization. This helped to spread the language to all the far-flung regions where it's now used.
England did have some pretty sweet ships back then.
Agreed. And if it weren't for all those sweet ships, we probably wouldn't be speaking the same language with different accents right now. We also wouldn't have a lot of words that we've adopted from other languages. During the colonial period, English took on many useful words from Greek, Italian, Spanish, Hindi, and Arabic.
Like what?
Well, one of my favorite words, coffee, comes from Turkish. We also use the words alcohol and zero, which were originally Arabic, and many cultural or musical words come from Italian. For example, opera and sonata. And of course, pizza.
Sure. And probably with tomato.
You mean tomato? No, actually, that's an American word.
Get out of here.
As the U.S. began to pull away from Britain in the 1700s, American English gained some words and expressions that were never used by British English speakers. The word tomato was actually a Native American word, for instance. There's other so-called Americanisms like barbecue, canyon, and dude.
Dude, everyone uses those words now.
You can blame Hollywood for that. American media was pretty dominant for most of the 20th century, and the majority of films with international popularity are still produced there.
Well, fine. But New Zealand has plenty of its own words, like the words whānau and haka, which come from Māori.
Sure, thanks to global information sharing, everybody can pass words back and forth now. English continues to adopt words from Chinese, Russian, Japanese, and probably everybody actually.
Well, you've shared plenty of information with me. Can I get back to my essay now?
Oh, right. Sorry.